Hi, I'm Susan Sadie. Welcome to Susan's Cooking School. Today we'll be making a wonderfully versatile pizza dough. To a half of a cup of lukewarm water, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of dry active yeast, and then we'll sprinkle 1 teaspoon of sugar on top of that. We'll give it a gentle stir, and then we'll let this sit until it is nice and foamy. Well, our yeast is ready. As you can see, it's nice and foamy, and this took about 15 minutes. So now we're going to prepare our dough. We have here
1.5 pounds
of high-protein bread flour. I'm using King Arthur Special Flour. We're going to add the rest of our ingredients. We have some extra virgin olive oil, 1 tablespoon. I'm adding 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. I'm going to add 1 1/4 cups water. And I'm going to add my yeast mixture I made earlier. Now we're going to mix this into a dough. We'll start in the bowl and incorporate our ingredients, and then we're going to dump it out onto the counter and knead it. If you need to add extra liquid, or if the dough feels too wet and you want to add extra flour, this is the time to do it. Through experience, you'll begin to notice whether your dough has the right proportion of ingredients. On a humid day, you may need to add less water, and if it's dry in the winter, you may need to add a little more liquid. So I've got my ingredients incorporated. Now I'm going to start the kneading process. Just bring everything together and begin to knead. Your dough should become smoother and less sticky as you continue kneading. First, I'm just going to try and incorporate all the bits of dough that came out of the bowl, and as it comes together more, I can actually start my kneading. I like to use a process that applies my whole body weight against the dough by rocking back and forth and kind of pushing and pulling the dough to me. This way it's not quite as tiring, and you can get a really strong knead, which is very important. We'll just continue this until the dough is smooth and thoroughly kneaded. There are a couple other kneading techniques that you can use, especially if your dough is a little sticky. My dough isn't sticky at all today, but one technique you can do is to pull the dough toward you and keep folding it over. This will help if you have a particularly sticky dough. And you can keep folding the dough this way with the heel of your hand. This is a more traditional method, folding and pushing. But the dough tends to get a little tight when you do that and makes it a little difficult to continue kneading. So you can alternate back and forth between the 2 different methods of kneading. So you can see this is nice and smooth now. It's not too dry. So we're going to round the dough, and we do this by folding over, bringing the dough together and making a smooth surface along the top that's going to hold in all the carbon dioxide produced by our yeast and get nice and light. So I've rounded my dough. Now we're going to place it right back in our bowl that we mixed it in and cover it and let it sit till it's about risen double. Well, you can tell it's risen. Now, one of the ways to tell if it's risen enough is we'll just touch the dough gently and see if the indentation stays. Well, you can see that stayed pretty nice. So now this dough is ready to be divided and rounded. Put a little flour on my counter. Scoop the dough out. And now we can divide this dough. I'm just going to sprinkle a little flour on top. You don't want to add too much flour. We'll divide this dough into some large pieces and then into some smaller ones. There's a couple larger ones, and now we'll do some small These will be like individual servings pizzas. Now for the rounding of these pieces, it's very important because the finished surface will actually be the finished surface of your product. So you want it to have a nice shape, and the rounding process also pushes out the air and makes your dough nice and smooth on the top. So we have a nice smooth surface on the top, and you can see we have some little bubbles underneath, which is nice because those are going to give us a nice pizza dough when we bake it in the oven. So one piece is done. There's different methods of doing it. The bigger pieces we're going to do a little different than the smaller ones. This piece is also done. These will make a much bigger one, obviously. Now the smaller pieces we can round in the palm of our hand. Now as you do this, you can see I'm pushing the dough around so that the top, I'm not flattening out, and I keep bringing the dough around to the center and making it round. This is one way of doing it. Now I'm going to do one in one hand like this, where I keep pushing the dough in with my fingers and I'm really pulling it down as I round this dough. And then I'm just going to pinch the bottom, and that's ready. And then when you get more advanced, you can do two at the same time. And then pinch the bottoms, and they're ready. So our balls are rounded. Now we'll sprinkle a little flour over here. Place our balls of dough. Here we have our pieces of dough ready to rise. This will be their final rise before we bake them and stretch them out and bake them. And I'm just going to cover it with a piece of plastic. I'm using a food storage bag that I've opened up to cover these with. We'll just let these rest until they're ready to go, about 1.5 times in size. Okay, let's uncover our dough. It's thoroughly rested and it's risen to about 1.5 times in size. Now we're going to stretch the dough, and it'll be ready to bake. I'm just going to put a little flour on my hands and on the counter. First we'll do one of the larger pieces. Well, the first things I do for a regular sized pizza is I make a ridge around the outside, and then I press down the inside. This will be our outer crust. Now, when you pick up the dough, you can start stretching it out from the center. And kind of try and stretch it out evenly. And I'm just pulling and stretching. You want to be careful to tear, but if your dough is kneaded well, it shouldn't tear too easily on you. If you want it thicker, don't stretch it as much. I'm going to be using a wooden peel here. I've got a little flour on here. You can use cornmeal if you want. And I'm going to place my dough on the peel. If your piece of dough is bigger than your peel, it's a little difficult to get it off onto the stone in the oven. So when you go to put this in the oven, put this on the edge of your stone, just shake it a little bit, and the dough comes right off. So that's it for this big one. We'll put this to the side, and then I'll show you how to do these little ones. Just put a little olive oil in the bottom of this pan and spread it around. Now I just can stretch this right in my hand because these are very small and very easy. I like to leave a little bit raised edge on the outside so that you get a nice full crust. And then just lay them right down. I'll do another one. Just stretch it from the middle out and place it on here. These don't have to be risen again. You can if you're not ready to bake them. And you can put fillings on here or cheese, however you want to do it, and these are ready to bake. They can also be baked in a 400-degree oven. And that's it.